indigenous populations who will be impacted by this. So that means new technologies such as blast free mining are some of the aspects which we must think about. So these are some of the challenges that we have to reflect on. What would be a solution towards overcoming some of these challenges? Clearly, we have to look at what is the best technology that is available worldwide. Now, over many years, Indian coal mining has really adopted technologies at a certain pace. I think with the introduction of the surface miners, we really took a step forward. We have added really high quality equipment. The technology at the mine phase has really continued to improve. But when I look at all of these challenges, and also when I look at examples worldwide, for example, Australia, China, and some of the other major locations like Indonesia, where mining has really progressed, then we clearly see there is still a lot of potential for us to bring in more technology into our mining processes. Some of these, for example, could be continuous mining, which we know it is capital intensive, but at the same time, from an operating cost perspective, it is very well understood that with continuous mining, it has been demonstrated that up to 25 to 30% reduction on an operating cost basis can be realized through the adoption of various continuous mining technologies. We have looked at various blast-free technologies, and still, I would say the excavation of overburden relies a lot on blasting in India. But there are technologies now which can even help us avoid this blasting. And when we avoid blasting, immediately that has a cascading impact. Firstly, there is an immediate benefit on the social license to mine, but also moving towards blast-free removal of overburden and coal allows us to access a lot of stranded assets for coal, which are not able to be extracted today simply because they are so close to various areas where people are living. So technology has to be really brought into the picture for us to realize this significant increase in the volumes, and also technology is required for us to start mining in a much more competitive way. Lastly, I would say it is very important that we think on additional technologies which are also able to improve the quality of our coal. We have a we have had a significant progression in building out coal washeries, and I think that part of the market also needs to continue to evolve significantly to improve the availability and utilization of Indian coal, going forward. Now, for that also, we also must consider associated technologies. So we have a lot of washery rejects. So we have to think of various technologies which can help us manage these washery rejects. So, for example, a more extensive use of CFBC technology to utilize these washery rejects and also generate power, which is then feeding these operations. Lastly, I would like to make one additional remark. I think coal mining today is highly diesel dependent. And this is really quite a contradiction because, on the one hand, we are looking towards improving the foreign exchange position by substituting imported coal. And on the other side, we are really driven by diesel based equipment in the entire mining process. So I think it would be good for the industry to also look at electrification, which will, for a start, I think, improve the emissions profile of the mining process itself, and also, reduce the environmental impact at the mine site, and also allow us to use surplus power generation through the utilization of washery rejects, etc., into the entire mining process itself. So I think I'm overall bullish and confident that with the strong demand perspective that has been highlighted, and which is definitely the situation and is the need and requirement of the Indian economy, I am confident with the introduction and adoption of technologies, we should be able to do this in a much, much better way, in a more acceptable way, to really produce this coal in a highly competitive manner and really propel the Indian economy forward. So, with those remarks, I would like to conclude and thank ICC team once again and congratulate them for this summit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bhatia, for being with us in this summit. This was really a very positive and an assertive speech. Thank you once again. And now I would request Mr. A.K. Singh, Executive Director, Vizag Steel, to make his remarks.
Good morning, respected distinguished panel of speakers, team invitees. In fact, Mr. Ray, I have a presentation to share. Could you enable the share?
Devabrata?
Yes, sir. I am making presentation, sir. Please, sir, round.
Yeah, please share his presentation.
Should I run, sir, or you?
Yeah, Devabrata, please run.
I'll present. Share file.
Mr. Singh, you would like to run the presentation, or you want my colleague Devabrata to do it for you?
I'll do it. I'll do it. Yes. Is it visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Sir,
Then
make
I'll
it
start.
full screen, sir. Yes.
Okay.
So you can start now. It's visible. And you are audible as well.
Once again, very good morning. Basically, I'll not be speaking on power sector coal requirement. We are a steel plant, and so my presentation will generally be limited to RINL and the coal usage at RINL. And I'll be limiting my presentation on coking coal aspects. So, Vizag Steel is a 7.3 million ton crude steel plant. It's a shore-based steel plant at Visakhapatnam. Vizag is a beautiful city blessed with mesmerizing coastal stretch and natural beauty in abundance. Um, just a small brief on our steel production, liquid steel production, and gross coke production, met coke production that we have been doing. As I said, I'll be mostly touching upon some of the aspects of my organization, which is relevant to coking coal and today's topic. Steel plant always relates to national steel policy, which was formulated in 2017. Present per capita steel consumption in the country stands at around 70 kg, including rural consumption of around 10 kg. It's much lower than the global average of 208 kg. As is generally understood in India, coal is the soul of Indian industry. Ministry of Steel is coordinating very actively with Ministry of Coal. Ministry of Coal and Ministry of Steel has been very listening very actively together to increase the availability of coking coal through overseas asset acquisition and also uh, liaising with Coal India Limited so that sufficient number of modern coking coal washeries get established. Regarding acquisition of coal overseas assets, ICVL, Indian Coal Ventures Limited, is one such venture, wherein RINL, SAIL, and NMDC have taken up, and that mine is already functional. Steel Ministry and the steel industry has taken up a lot of initiative to establish coal linkages with Russia also to put a check on oligopolistic coking coal market of Australia. In fact, last year, Steel Minister and we had also visited Russia, particularly in the far eastern region of Russia, wherein a lot of mining initiatives have been taken. And we are trying to source coking coal as well as PCI coal from Russia also. Coal Ministry and Steel Ministry are seriously working together to how to reduce coking coal imports. Plans are afoot. There were a lot of high-level meetings conducted in the Ministry of Coal along with Ministry of Steel as to how fast we can establish or set up modern coal washeries by Coal India Limited, so as to improve the S percentage in the coking coal that is made available in India. Presently, it is not healthy. That the coal that the coking coal from Coal India Limited is available is not at all present. That needs to be brought down, say below 18%. And then coming to other aspects of Make in India initiative, creation of steel demand in the country is one of the major tasks to be undertaken in this direction. Steel Ministry has identified construction and manufacturing sectors like rural development, urban infrastructure, roads and highways, railway network, etc., to be the focus areas of steel consumption. Also, areas like shipbuilding, automobiles, parts sectors, capital goods production, etc., are where steel consumption can be enhanced. With regard to the national steel policy of 2017, if India has to go up to the steel production of say 250 million tons, then the coking coal requirement in India would be around 150 million tons, and the coal for polarized coal injection will be to the tune of 30 to 35 million tons per annum. Last year, India imported around 49 million tons of coking coal, 37 million tons from Australia, 8 million tons from US and Canada put together, and 2 million tons from Mozambique. Also sourcing from Indonesia and Russia has started. With expansion of steel industry in India, there has been a sharp rise in the import of metallurgical coal in India. Almost around 80 to 85% of our metallurgical coal requirement is being imported presently. So there needs to be a lot of focus on maximizing PCI in the blast furnaces, and the coke rate in the blast furnaces has to improve. Largely world over, a blast furnace is the major route of steel production. Mostly around 60 to 65% of hot metal is produced all over the world through blast furnace route. So this is one area where we need to focus more in order to improve efficiency, cost, as well as coal utilization in India. For a conservative estimate of 200 million tons of crude steel production by 2030, around 100 million ton of coke is required to be imported, considering 300 to 350 million ton, 300 and 350 kg per ton of hot metal of coke rate in blast. So steel industry needs to build another 60 to 65 million ton per annum of coke production capacity by 2030-31. Not an easy task. A lot of investment is required. Also, a lot of land acquisition and environmental issues need to be addressed, as it requires for recovery type of coke. RNL does not have either coal captive mines or iron ores captive mines. It's quite distressing to note that nearly 65 to 68% of our total expenditure in the plant goes on raw material purchase. Since RNL doesn't have raw material security, it faces all the music, what with price volatility, what with effects of endogenous and exogenous sources and factors, and it makes functioning of a public sector like RNL very, very difficult. This is the coking coal receipt of RNL per annum, and roughly around 4 to 4.5 million ton of coking coal we have been consuming, out of which very small percentage of medium coking coal we use, which is sourced from Coal India Limited. This is the average cost of coal that we have been paying. Prices of coking coal in 16-17 third quarter went through the roof. It almost from September onwards, September 2016, it skyrocketed from $80 an FOB to almost more than $220 per ton FOB. This is the total expenditure on coking coal that we have been incurring per annum. The prices of imported hard coals that has been there on an average per annum. The prices of coking coal, prices of PCI coal, this is the freight charges that we bear per ton of coal. This is the production plan at RNL. Coke requirement continues to be high, and we have only 4 Coke 1 batteries. 5th Coke 1 battery is likely to be commissioned next month. The 4 Coke 1 batteries, these are the 7 meter tall Coke 1 batteries, which are by any standards the oldest Coke 1 batteries operating in India. They have completed more than 31 years of age and still running healthy. These are the plans with regard to coking coal requirement at RINL. So as I said, blast furnace is the major route of steel making, and as long as blast furnace route of steel making continues to be there, coke cannot be dispensed with, and coke making will again entail high quality of coking coal. And so the coking coal quality remains a very important parameter, and that's the reason 80 to 85% of imported of coking coal is imported from abroad, because the indigenous coking coal available in India are not up to the mark with respect to the rheological properties that it shows or the ash content that is delivered by the mining companies. So as I said, prime quality coking coal is not available in India. The Indian coking coal largely have high ash properties and high organic as well as inorganic inerts. So at RNL, we have been mostly sourcing coal from majorly from Australia, also from US, Canada, Indonesia, Mozambique. The ICVL also we have been taking, and of late we have been trying to source coal from Russia also. We have made some forays, and hopefully we'll be very soon start importing from Russia also. We have done certain research and developments with regard to coal blending, uh, because that plays a major role in cost saving. We have gone for straight coal. Earlier we were using, before 2009, we were using blended coal from abroad, but now we take on straight coal and do blending at our base. So finally, what I would like to summarize is if at all we have to be dependent on indigenous coal to a large extent, lot of trust on establishment of coal washeries have to be made, and that is where we are lacking very badly. Underground mining, as Bhattacharya sir was telling, underground mining has also to be focused more, and the shipping cost, the dipping of shipping cost, I mean the transportation cost of coal has also to be borne in mind. There has to be a lot of infrastructural development required with respect to road and rail linkages. Majorly rail linkages have to be improved to a greater extent, and also use of better technology in coal mining, coal washing, as well as steel making is one area where we need to focus in order to realize the national steel policy, that dream into a reality. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Singh, for such an informative remark. And now I will request our last speaker of the session, Mr. A.K. Shukla, CMD Hindustan Copper Limited, to address us. But before he addresses, I will request all our attendees, if you have any question, please put forward your question in the chat box so that after this speech, we can take it up with each and every panel. Request all the attendees forward your questions in the chat box. Over to Mr. Shukla.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My previous speakers have elaborated very nicely on the scenario of Indian coal industry as well as the global demand and supply. I would like to focus on some of the issues related to demand and supply in mid to long term outlook for Indian coal sector. Coal has been the major source of energy for long. It is the backbone on which modern electricity generation rests. We understand this thing. World proved coal reserves were estimated to something 1,069 billion tons at the end of 2019. I took this figure from a report. USA has the largest coal reserves that is about 24% share of the total world reserve, followed by Russia, 15%, Australia, 14%, and China, 13%. As per Global Energy Statistical Yearbook 2020, total energy consumption in 2019 was in the form of oil, 31%, gas, 23%, electricity, 10%, biomass, 10%, and coal, 26%. Coal currently supplies around 30% of the primary energy and around 41% of the global electricity generation. Where China dominates world coal usage as per the recent data, it consumes around 51% of the coal worldwide, more than the rest of the world combined. Other major consumers of coal include India, that is 11%, US 9%, Japan 3%, and Russia 3%. In European countries, we are seeing that gradually they are uh, going for other sources of energy, and coal mines are going to be closed in coming years, in 10 to 15 years. As per the IA forecast, coal use would rise to over 50% by 2030, with developing countries being responsible for 97% of this increase, primarily to meet their futuristic electrification targets. Again, the International Energy Agency predicts that the future of energy growth will be led by non OECD countries such as India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, South Asia, and China. Coal demand in Southeast Asia is forecast to grow by more than 5% per year through 2024, led by Indonesia and Vietnam. However, in 2019, an overall trend of decreasing consumption of coal has been observed. As per BP's statistical review of World Energy 2020, during 2019, global coal consumption declined by 0.6%, and its share in primary energy fell to its lowest level in 60 years. Increases in coal consumption were driven by the emerging economies, particularly China and Indonesia, 1.8 exajoule and zero point 0.6 exajoule, respectively. Cleaner fossil fuel alternatives are emerging. However, they still only account for 12% of energy generation. This was outweighed by a sharp fall in OECD demand, which fell to its lowest level in our data series. Global coal production rose by 1.5%, with China and Indonesia providing the only significant increase. The largest declines came from the US and Germany. Day before yesterday, I was watching TV, and there was a great protest in Germany, and they were opposing the country's policy of going for coal mining till 2038. The activists were saying that the deadline is too late to effectively tackle climate change. So, this is going on worldwide, especially in the developed countries. Public and private climate policies, combined with the competition from cheaper gas fired and renewable power generation, have accelerated the closure of many coal fired power plants and resulted in dramatic cuts in coal consumption in the European Union. In US, where nearly 14 gigawatt of coal-fired power capacity was closed in 2019. Now, in our country, coal consumption declined by 3.4% due to higher hydropower and renewable generation that cut coal needs in the power sector. Coal consumption slowed down in Indonesia and decreased in South Korea and Japan due to a lower demand from the power sector. It also slowed down in large coal producing countries such as Russia. They have switched to coal to gas in the power sector, and South Africa, they reduced operations at coal fired power plants due to technical issues and even contracted in Australia and Turkey. Now, coming to the Indian scenario, in 2019, India was the third largest producer as well as the third largest consumer of electricity. The energy sector in the South Asian country consumes about 70% of the domestic coal produced. Coal India Limited, the largest coal producing company in the world, had produced approximately 600 plus million metric tons of coal in 2019. As we know that in our country, 750 million ton coal was produced and the demand is around 975 million ton. As per the draft National Energy Policy formulated by NITI Aayog, India Vision 2040 envisages demand-driven provision of energy at affordable prices, high per capita consumption of electricity, access to clean cooking energy, and electricity with universal coverage, low emission, and security of supply as criteria that would characterize the energy parameters of India in 2040. The installed coal based electricity generation capacity is expected to grow to 330 to 441 gigawatt by 2040. This is likely to translate into a coal demand of 1.1 to 1.4 billion tons. This was told by the previous speaker, Mr. Partha Bhattacharya, that we have to touch the 1 billion mark by 2025. The known levels of proven coal reserves of about 138 billion tons as of 31st March 2016. I am keeping this board figure with me, may only be able to support an annual peak production of 1.2 to 1.3 billion tons till 2037, with a gradual decrease thereafter. This fact calls for intensifying exploration to enhance the proven coal reserves. Country has to go for intensive exploration in coal mining belt, because at least country should know the reserves or how much reserves country is having. Though if the demand will decline also, this will be useful for the country. Power generation for renewables is forecast to expand strongly, with wind capacity doubling and solar photovoltaic projects to increase fourfold between 2018 and 2024. But that is not enough to prevent coal power generation from increasing by 4.6% per year to 2024. Coal has long been a reliable source of energy. However, with growing concern about climate change, cleaner fossil fuel alternatives are emerging as energy sources. Air pollution and global warming are two of the most serious impacts of coal burning. The same chemistry that enables coal to produce energy, that is breaking down of carbon molecules, produces carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and other harmful environmental impacts and pollutants that harm public health. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, there is substantial evidence that higher concentrations of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases have increased the mean temperature of Earth since 1950. This increase is probably the cause of noticeable reduction in snow cover and sea ice extent in the northern hemisphere. In addition, a worldwide increase in sea level and a decrease in mountain glacier extent have been documented. Technologies being considered to reduce carbon dioxide levels, including biological fixation, cryogenic recovery, disposal in the oceans and aquifers, and conversion to methanol. Coal India has been ranked 8th on the list of top 20 companies responsible for global carbon emission from 1965 to 2017, according to a recent data set released by US-based Climate Accountability Institution. Cleaner fossil fuel alternatives are emerging, however, they still only account for 12% of energy generation. Since the 1970s, stricter laws have significantly reduced the environmental damage caused by coal mining in developed countries, though more severe damage continues to occur in many developing countries. The COVID 19 pandemic and the corresponding lockdown imposed have reduced electricity use and industrial production in most of the countries and have reduced global coal consumption considerably. It is observed that global coal demand fell by 8% in quarter first of 2020 relative to Q1 of 2019. The significant drop was driven by lower demand in the electricity sector, where two-thirds of coal is consumed. Coal power generation fell by around 10% during the pandemic. Industrial use of coal also declined during the period, although a reported increase in coal use for steel production in China mitigated the decline. Falling of global coal demand by about 8% in 2020 is the largest drop since World War II, with coal use declining in virtually every sector of every region in the world. As predicted, coal demand in China is likely to decline in 2020 by around 5% despite the gradual recovery since the lockdown period as an after effect of the pandemic. Significant declines in coal demand in advanced economies predicted by IEA like 25% in US, around 20% in European Union, and 5%, 5 to 10% in Korea and Japan. Uh, India has taken a major decision to fully open the coal and mining sectors for competition, capital, participation, and technology. Speaking on the occasion, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi said opening of coal mines for commercial mining will be bringing the coal sector out of decades of lockdown.